Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, we learn about one new mission and a new global event in the works. Plus, there are major changes to the patch cadence for this year, with the path to server meshing now underway. Right, so let's kick off with the big news for this week, which is regarding Alpha 3.21. Now, long story short, the Alpha 3.20.1 and 0.2 patches are now changing to just Alpha 3.21, with point patches in this branch to follow, so 3.21.1, 0.2 and whatever they see fit, as they will be separating the replication layer very soon, and felt that with this next big step to server meshing, the patch cycle warranted a step up in the numbering format. Now this means that the features on the roadmap release view will release in a 3.21 branch alongside the separation of the replication layer. And they have already released the 3.21 patch to the PTU for testing, which is in essence the exact same patch as 3.20 in terms of content and features, although it does have some new features that include the new retrieval consignment missions, the steal evidence from Security Post Korea mission, the reactivation of the Orison platform missions, now renamed Repel Raid, which include the new Crusader platforms as well as points of interest for these missions, plus a driver remote turret quality of life improvement. Now, the reason for this separate build on the PTU, which is open to everybody by the way, there is no patch wave with this one, it is just open right now, is to ensure that they don't have a repeat of what happened with 3.18's release with persistent entity streaming, and instead only graduate a patch or a piece of technology once it has been fully validated and proved out so that it keeps the live server's integrity. Now this channel will be used to introduce the new underlying technology as they progress to server meshing, with the first bit being the replication layer, in which the game's networking replication and state are separated from the game server into its own service, with the team hoping to begin testing server recovery without disconnecting game clients from the universe. So this basically means a proper recovery system for when we suffer a 30k, and instead of being booted out of the game to the main menu, with the shard losing everything, it will connect players back into a new shard with everything as it was. And so for us, the players will likely feel more like a stall for a few seconds, and then back in like nothing ever happened. And this work is the essential next step to getting 4.0, server meshing, and of course Pyro out the door. Now, the separation of the replication layer also frees up so much more memory on the server, and as Benoit said, he is expecting performance gains on the server, and running with real player behaviors will allow them to quantify this gain properly, as well as identify areas of code that might prevent them from having a gain, which will then be addressed before graduating the replication layer to the live servers. And I have been told that this change should also mean the AI will finally behave more as intended and not be tied to the server frame rate as much, so there is a lot of potential here, aside from it just being a necessary step to getting server meshing done. And they did say we will hear a lot more on this upcoming week's roadmap update on Wednesday, including the change on the release view for the 3.21 branch, and at CitizenCon they will provide a lot more information on this new preview channel and how it's gonna work. So this is the best news we have had in a long while, and the fact that this channel is now there for this to properly test this change is so important to help get server meshing out the door, but equally important to ensure that the integrity of the live servers don't get destroyed like it did with 3.18 and persistent entity streaming. And as they have mentioned previously, this will all be done incrementally, so should result in hopefully an easier process of finding the issues and dealing with them before pushing it out. So great news, and I do look forward to learning more on Wednesday and during CitizenCon, but the next stage to getting server meshing has begun, which is very exciting. Now I will of course cover any roadmap changes in my usual roadmap update video on Thursday, so do keep your eyes out for that, but it is onwards and upwards from here. And I do hope for as smooth a ride as possible. I'm sure there will be issues that will arise, but hopefully with this new process, CIG can identify them, fix them, and get it pushed out much smoother than we saw with 3.18. Anyway, great news, but let us move on. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was with the mission teams talking about two upcoming new additions. First up, we have a new mission called Data Heist, and this new mission introduces a new organization called Bit Zero, who are basically a bunch of rich kids who enjoy hacking to try and rip off the rich. And this will all start with these new missions and will utilize the underground facilities, where the player will need to fight through and gain access to the mainframe. And so for now, this will mean either using a crypto key like we see normally for getting rid of your crime stat, or they say you can find things around the environment to help gain access to the mainframe, which he will not mention today. He will let us find that out for ourselves. Now, something to point out here is that this mission does not currently include any new updates to the hacking mechanic. The mission team are still restricted to what is available to them, and I don't think the new hacking mechanics are rolling out for this mission. So for now, it will likely just be using the current methods we have, and once the new hacking system comes along, which will offer a couple of new methods, one being more like a real-world hacking technique, then they will hopefully roll them into this mission, as I'm sure they will be future-proofing this mission for that very thing. But at the very least, the fact that they have gone all effort in with people like the narrative team to create a dedicated hacking group is very interesting and setting the scene for the full hacking systems in the future. Anyway, back to the mission. Once you've hacked into the mainframe, the hacker group can then gain access to the system and begin stealing the data from the servers. But while you are waiting for that to complete, you will need to maintain the safety of these servers, which will include waves of enemies who are coming in to try and stop you, but also the owners of the servers will try other methods to stop you remotely. So they will be turning off the cooling systems for the servers, which will then lead to the servers overheating to stop you from getting the data, and the players will need to look around the location to find out why they're overheating and which ones are overheating to try and stop it by way of what looks to be reactivation codes, and then that will get the coolers back up and running again. Now, this mission, they say when it first comes in, will be just an unlawful mission, so for the criminals and pirates of the verse, but it does sound like they will expand it to more options over time. And with this new mission comes a bit of new technology as well for the mission team, by way of modules that randomize which server gets shut down, so that players will need to be on their toes. This tech also can be used for other areas of design for missions, like the NPC spawn closets, determining how many enemies are spawned in each time, with each mission being different. So basically you could get many NPCs spawning in and having to kill waves and waves and waves, or less enemies spawning in and it being a little easier. So I suppose increasing the tools to help expand on this dynamic mission system, which will definitely be a big win going forwards, because then all the missions will feel less repetitive. Now, I do like the premise of this mission, as it requires teamwork, communications, and problem solving, all the while fighting waves of enemies in FPS. I certainly would prefer a lawful version personally, because I do like to fight the nine-tailed scum, but it is great to not just see new missions come along, but also new technology to evolve that they can use for other missions, as well as the introduction of a new organization, which revolves around the hacking systems. So hopefully we are not waiting too long to see the proper hacking mechanic come along. Fingers crossed we get an update on that at CitizenCon, as I think it will be pretty interesting. Now, the next mission we heard about was a new global event called Blockade Runner, which is intended to completely replace the Ninetales Lockdown, as I said that this was just one of the least played events. So the premise of Blockade Runner is that a criminal organization, likely Ninetales for now, have set up a blockade to a particular Leo station. In this case it was Everest Harbour above Lawville, which makes trade and travel between the stations very difficult, and in particular they are trying to stop the trade of Quantanium, which they use for their own gains. So players are then asked to deliver Quantanium from Everest Harbour, so picking it up there, to its refinery stations, being HRL1 and HRL2, but because Quantanium is a material that has a time limit before it becomes volatile and then ultimately useless, it needs to be delivered fast. Now, when you arrive at the Leo station, so Everest Harbour, you will need to get through the blockade, land in a hangar and buy the commodities, and then take them to one of the L stations, which could also lead to being interdicted on the way, and once you arrive at the L station there will be another blockade to get through before you can land and sell. And ultimately everyone is working towards the same goal, delivering enough Quantanium for it to no longer matter. And the intention of this mission, aside from it being a cargo trade loop, is to encourage players to work together and escort others to help get the Quantanium delivered. So a bit of a combination of trade and hauling and space combat and escorting. And I personally feel like this event will be a nice addition and hopefully a lot of fun. Similar to Xenothreat in a way, but especially when they start expanding on things like master modes, physical damage and multi-crew aspects, providing so much more to everything. It is also going to be very interesting to see what happens after the event with Persistence and the SRV on its way, the Argo SRV, as I'm sure there will be tons of derelicts to clean up and salvage. And personally, I look forward to taking part in this with my org, getting hauling ships loaded up with gunners and ships to escort. I feel will be a lot of fun working together. Or just simply jumping in with your combat ship and offering support to the haulers will be a nice touch as well. Now on the flip side, I do wonder if they will be supporting Reputation with working on the side of the gang, as much of that Reputation work is going on now. Might not be ready in time, but then we don't know when this mission is coming. So a lot of potential for this new event that I look forward to learning more about and trying out with my org. But that was Inside Star Citizen. Let us move on. So also this week, the Galactopedia was updated, which looks like they are really fleshing out the Xi'an portion of the star map. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.